They ordered her to land. They threatened her with jets, with force, with silence. But Captain Amelia Reyes didn't just refuse. She uncovered a secret so powerful it could rewrite humanity's future forever. Inside her cargo wasn't a weapon, but a mirror to every possible future we might choose or destroy. A single choice turned her from a civilian pilot into humanity's last line of defense, and its first ambassador to something far beyond our world. What she saw changed everything. Now, the question isn't if we survive, but who we decide to become. The morning sun cast a golden hue over the tarmac of the small regional airport as Captain Amelia Reyes performed her pre-flight checks. The hum of the engines, the vast expanse of the sky, and the sense of freedom were unmatched. She double-checked her flight plan and coordinates. She responded, "Philippine Air Force Control, this is Echo Charlie 452. My flight path is as filed. Please advise on the nature of the restriction." As she ascended into the clear blue sky, Amelia reveled in the serenity that flying always brought her. She had never encountered such a directive without explanation. She needed to make a decision, and fast. "Echo Charlie 452, this is Philippine Air Force Control. You are entering restricted airspace. Divert your course immediately," crackled the radio. Amelia's brow furrowed. There was a pause before the response came. "Echo Charlie 452, you are to land at the nearest airfield immediately. This is a direct order." Amelia's heart pounded. "Echo Charlie 452, failure to comply will result in interception. Land immediately." Amelia took a deep breath, her mind racing. Amelia's hand hovered over the throttle. Her eyes scanned the horizon, the digital panels, and finally the radio again. Interception wasn't a term used lightly. For the Air Force to threaten that over a routine flight meant one of two things. Either she was flying into something she wasn't supposed to see, or someone, somewhere, was trying to keep her grounded for reasons not listed in any aviation manual. "Echo Charlie 452, the voice repeated, harder now, more clipped. "Land immediately, or you will be forced down." Amelia didn't answer right away. She glanced at the parcel strapped behind her co-pilot seat. The container was nondescript, lightweight, military green, with no markings, just coordinates and a seal from a private contractor. Nothing unusual, nothing suspicious. At least, that's what she thought. Her fingers finally reached for the radio again. "Philippine Air Force, this is Echo Charlie 452. My cargo is time-sensitive. I am proceeding as filed unless an emergency is declared. Over." She knew the rules. They couldn't legally force her to land without declaring a national emergency or providing a reason within protocol. She waited. The silence on the other end stretched 10 seconds, 15. Then came the reply, not from the tower, but from a second frequency. "Echo Charlie 452, this is Falcon 1. You have 2 F-16s at your 7 o'clock. Comply or prepare to be escorted." She turned her head left, out the window. At first there was nothing. Then, like ghosts appearing from the clouds, they came into view, sleek gray birds slicing through the air with predatory precision. Her breath hitched. She clicked the radio back on. "Falcon 1, be advised I am a civilian aircraft on an authorized flight path, transporting non-lethal cargo. I request identification of the threat." Again, no answer to her question, just a repeat. "Echo Charlie 452, land now." "Negative," she said, voice sharp. "Not until someone tells me what the hell is going on." The sky went dead silent. Then a third voice entered the frequency, calm, deep, American. "Captain Amelia Reyes, this is Lieutenant Colonel Grant Mathers, United States Air Force Liaison. We are invoking Joint Airspace Operations Protocol under the Defense Sharing Agreement. Your aircraft has triggered a red level alert. You are to land at Clark Air Base immediately." Amelia froze. A red-level alert? That only happened in wartime, or during national crisis scenarios. She keyed the mic slowly, trying to hide the tremble in her voice. "Colonel Mathers, I don't have any weapons on board. I have a sealed delivery for "We know exactly what you have on board," he interrupted. Her mouth went dry. "Then you know it was handed off by Raven Logistics," she said. "Same contractor you people use. What's in this box?" A pause, and then he said 6 words that would change everything. "You were never supposed to open it." Her heart skipped a beat. "I didn't." "Good. Then don't." But it was too late. 10 minutes before takeoff, Amelia had unfastened the crate, not out of suspicion, but curiosity. She had seen something that didn't match the manifest. A case within a case. Inside it, a sealed envelope marked, "For presidential eyes only." She hadn't opened the envelope, but she'd seen enough. Someone had made a mistake, and now they were scrambling to contain it. "You're making a mistake," she said into the radio, her voice sharpening. "No, Captain Reyes," Mathers said. "You did." The jets moved into formation behind her, close, tight. Her hands gripped the yoke. She knew what came next. They'd try to force her down. One might attempt to clip her wing or signal a maneuver that left her no choice. If she didn't land, it could escalate. But Amelia had flown combat relief missions. She wasn't just a cargo pilot, and she knew one thing above all else. If they were this desperate to land her, it meant someone powerful, very powerful, was afraid of what she had. And that meant she couldn't land it, not yet. She pulled back the throttle and climbed. The radio erupted. "Echo Charlie 452, do not ascend. You are violating direct military instruction." "Yeah," she muttered, switching to private frequency. "I get that a lot." Her jet surged upward, slicing the clouds like a blade. The G-forces pressed against Amelia's chest as her cargo plane surged into the sky. It was reckless, maybe suicidal, but she didn't care. Every instinct screamed that landing now wouldn't end with her walking away, not when they were throwing military protocol out the window and sending fighter jets after a civilian. The F-16s surged up behind her like angry wasps, one flanking left, the other right, staying just outside her wingtip. A warning. She could almost feel the pilots glaring through their visors. They wouldn't shoot her down. Not yet. Not unless the order came from the highest level. Even then, they'd hesitate. This wasn't hostile territory. This was her country. But the pressure wasn't just military. It was political. Someone powerful wanted her silenced. The radio crackled again. "Echo Charlie 452, this is your final warning. You will be engaged if you do not divert course within 1 minute." Amelia stared at the coordinates flashing on her GPS. She wasn't far from Calayan, the remote strip on Pagasa Island, rarely used, barely maintained. But it was outside controlled airspace. If she could make it there. She tapped into an alternate channel, old, unencrypted, rarely used anymore. It was a legacy frequency from her military aid days. A long shot. "Mayday, Mayday," she said, hoping someone, anyone, was still monitoring it. "This is civilian aircraft Echo Charlie 452 requesting emergency descent to Calayan Airstrip. Hostile aircraft in pursuit. Not armed. I repeat, not armed. Request clearance and immediate ground support." There was silence. Then a static, punctured reply. A woman's voice, rough but firm. "Echo Charlie 452, this is Calayan Station. What the hell did you just say?" Amelia exhaled in relief. "I need a runway in 5 minutes. Runway's a goat path with lights. You'll break your gear." "I'll land it in the trees if I have to." "Copy. Clear descent path. We'll light the damn trees if needed." The line cut. They were prepping for her. She dropped altitude fast, the airframe groaning in protest. The F-16s mirrored her movement, but slower, cautious now. They didn't want to follow her into disputed airspace, at least not without escalating tensions they couldn't contain. Her radar screamed as her low-altitude and sudden drop pinged defense grids across the region. She was now a blip in every intelligence center watching the South China Sea, and she knew exactly what they were thinking. Who is she, and what the hell is she carrying? The crate rattled behind her. A tremor of metal, like something inside, was active. She turned and looked back at it. The seals, standard magnetic ones, were flashing green. That wasn't right. They should have stayed inert until delivery. She'd flown sensitive tech before, but nothing that lit itself up mid-air. Unless... She gritted her teeth. Oh, hell no. The plane dipped again as she braced for turbulence. Out her window, the island crested into view, a tiny speck surrounded by ocean, sand, and a cracked strip of cement, barely longer than a football field. She throttled back. Let the nose dip, flaps down. The wheels hit hard. A bounce, then another, then screeching rubber, and a rattling so loud it felt like the wings might tear off. The cargo shifted, thudded. She braked harder. Dust and dirt clouded the windows as she finally came to a halt at the edge of the strip. Silence. Then a voice crackled over her headset. "Welcome to paradise, Captain. We've got company inbound, so let's make this quick." Two men in camo ran from a tin-roofed shack toward her. They had old rifles, sweat-soaked shirts, and a look in their eyes that said they'd seen everything, but not this. She jumped down from the cockpit, unlocking the side door. "Help me get this crate out, carefully." They hauled it down, eyes widening as they saw the blinking panel. One of them, young, probably just out of ROTC, asked, "What's in it?" "I don't know," she admitted, "but someone's willing to kill me to get it back." Then, from the sky, the scream of jets returning. She turned. The F-16s were circling again. Only this time, there were 4. Amelia stood next to the blinking case, wind tousling her hair as the rumble of warplanes echoed across the sand. She knew one thing for sure now. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about what was inside that crate, and the secret it held that could silence skies and governments alike. And she was the only one who knew it existed. The soldiers dragged the crate into the rusting hangar, sweat pouring down their faces as the F-16s passed overhead like vultures waiting for something to die. The wind picked up from the jets, sending dust swirling into Amelia's eyes, but she didn't blink. Her gaze stayed on the sky, the aircraft, the threat they symbolized. Inside the hangar, one of the men, he introduced himself as Sergeant Delos Reyes, slammed the metal doors shut behind them. The other, Corporal Sampang, was already fumbling with the crate's latches. "Don't!" Amelia snapped. "It's sealed for a reason." "But it's active," he argued, pointing to the blinking green strip. "This thing's got power, probably a signal too. Whatever's in it might be—" "We don't know what it is, and if it's transmitting, we don't want to give whoever's tracking it a clean signal." Delos Reyes looked at her. "You flew that thing across restricted airspace without knowing what was inside?" Amelia exhaled hard, stepping away. "It was a routine cargo job. Cebu to Tagbanua. I wasn't supposed to look inside, but I did. I saw a second seal, one that said, 'Presidential eyes only,' and then the Air Force tried to bring me down like I was hijacking a battleship. That's not normal. You know that." Sampang squatted next to the crate, tilting his head. "Why bring it here? Why not land at a civilian strip and let the authorities handle it?" "Because the authorities are part of the problem." They all turned at once when the radio crackled again. Amelia crossed the hangar and picked up the handset. "Echo Charlie 45P2, this is Falcon 1. You are now on unauthorized military property. Surrender the cargo and prepare to be detained. This is your final chance." "Detained?" Delos Reyes asked. "This is a Filipino island. They can't detain anyone here unless someone up the chain gave them the right," Amelia finished grimly, "which means it's not just the Americans. Our own brass must be involved." There was a long moment of silence. Then a low beeping began from the crate. Everyone jumped. Sampang backed up fast. "It's armed!" No, Amelia said. That's a signal check. I've seen it before on prototype hardware. Experimental AI guidance modules. The kind they don't officially acknowledge exists. She crouched beside the crate and placed her hand on the cold metal. The beeping slowed, synchronized with her pulse. Then a soft hiss, and a new panel slid open on the top. She stared at it. Inside was not a weapon. It was a glass cube. Suspended inside it was something small and dark, like a sliver of charred stone wrapped in wires and light. "What the hell?" she whispered. Sampang leaned over. "Is that—" Before he could finish, the cube lit up. Not a screen, not light in the traditional sense, but a pulse. A flash that filled the hangar and passed straight through their bodies. Amelia gasped and stumbled back. The pulse carried something with it. An image, a sound, a memory not her own. She saw a city crumbling, skyscrapers collapsing, faces she didn't recognize screaming, a voice human but distant, saying, "They can't know. If they know, it all collapses." And then darkness. She collapsed onto the floor. When she came to, both soldiers were staring at her like they'd seen a ghost. "You saw it too?" she asked. De los Reyes nodded slowly. "That was a warning?" "No," Amelia said. Her voice was hoarse. "That was a recording. Not from now. From the future." Silence. Sampang whispered, "That thing. It's not a weapon. It's a message." "No," Amelia said again. "It's both." They heard the jets again, circling lower now, a different tone, slower, more deliberate. Amelia stood. "They're coming, not just to detain, to erase." De los Reyes moved to the crate and closed the panel. "What do we do?" She looked at both men, then at the glass cube inside the crate. "We run." They wheeled the crate onto a rusting flatbed parked beside the hangar, its engine choking as it sputtered to life. Sampang climbed into the driver's seat while De los Reyes and Amelia clung to the sides. Every bump in the uneven dirt runway made the crate lurch dangerously, the glass cube inside catching the sun and casting prismatic flashes across the sand. Behind them, the sound of jet engines changed pitch. Lower now, slower. "They're not just circling," Amelia said. "They're marking targets." De los Reyes tightened the strap around the crate, his fingers fumbling with the frayed canvas. "We've got maybe 5 minutes before they call in a ground team." "Less," Sampang said from the cab. "They don't send 4 F-16s just to scare someone." That was a distraction. As if to prove his point, a distant thrum reached their ears. Helicopters. Amelia scanned the sky. Chinooks, maybe Blackhawks, armed. She turned to De los Reyes. "How far is the old radio bunker?" 3 clicks south, he said, barely standing. "Does it still have satellite uplink?" He nodded slowly. "It might. Depends if the solar rig is still functional." "Drive," she ordered. Sampang gunned the flatbed forward, tires kicking up dust and gravel. The crate bounced in the back, the cube inside glowing faintly now, constant, steady, a heartbeat. Amelia kept her hand on it, eyes narrowed against the wind. Something about that cube felt wrong, not dangerous, at least not in the conventional sense, but unnatural. The images she saw, the memory. It wasn't just a recording, it felt alive. As they barreled across the rugged trail, a voice crackled in her headset again. "This is Colonel Mathers. Amelia, if you're hearing this, listen to me. You've got something you don't understand. That signal pulse, what you saw, it's not meant for civilians. It's not meant for anyone. That tech is classified beyond top secret. We didn't even authorize that cargo to move. Someone else did. Someone outside the chain of command." She grabbed the mic. "Then who the hell did authorize it?" Silence. Then, "We don't know." She blinked. "You're saying there's black ops inside the Pentagon moving tech your own generals don't know about?" "Yes," Mathers said. "And now they know you've seen it." Amelia's voice dropped. "What happens now?" "They won't just stop at you, or the soldiers helping you. That message, If it's exposed, changes everything. She looked at the cube. Changes what? The balance, Mathers said. Of everything. The radio cut out. Behind them, the sound of rotors grew louder. Sampang shouted, "They're landing on the ridge!" Delos Reyes unholstered his sidearm, an old 9mm. "Not much, but it'll slow them down." Amelia grabbed his wrist. "We don't shoot unless they do." "And if they do?" She looked down at the cube. "Then we make sure this gets out." The flatbed tore around the final bend. In the distance, a crooked metal shack sat atop a hill of gravel and sand. Solar panels, mostly shattered, jutted from the roof like bent wings. A rusted satellite dish leaned against the far wall. The bunker. Sampang didn't stop. He drove straight up to the edge and slammed the brakes. Amelia jumped down, wrenched open the steel door, and ushered them inside. Inside, the air was dry and metallic. Dust coated every surface. The equipment looked like it hadn't been used in years. But one green light blinked stubbornly above an old transmitter console. "Still breathing," Delos Reyes muttered. Amelia set the crate on the floor, pried open the top panel again, and stared at the cube. "We need to transmit it. Everything. The data inside." "You said it was for presidential eyes only," Sampang said. "Sending it makes us traitors." "No," she said. "Keeping it buried makes us complicit." She wired the cube's output to the console, watching as code flooded the screens. Symbols, numbers, then images. The same ones from before. This time they were clearer. A burning city, a sky filled with black machines, not of this world. Soldiers firing at something they couldn't see, and finally, an emblem. Not military, not national, but corporate. A stylized serpent wrapped around a globe, stamped across every corner of the transmission. She recognized it. Vireo Systems, a private defense firm, ultra-secretive. Whispers in aviation circles said they were working on weaponized AI, so advanced it made nuclear weapons look like fireworks. "They created this," she breathed. Delos Reyes leaned in, and they tried to move it under cover of a regular supply drop. "And now they're trying to erase the trail," she said. Sampang stared at the screen. "You realize what this means? If the world sees this, if this goes public, it changes everything," she whispered. She hovered her hand over the transmitter, then pressed send. The moment her finger pressed the send button, the entire bunker trembled, not from the transmission itself, but from the thunderous vibration of approaching rotors. The sound swelled until it was deafening, drowning out the old equipment's whine and even the crackling of the radio. Amelia didn't flinch. She watched the green progress bar on the transmitter inch forward. 3%, 7%, 9%. Delos Reyes peered through a narrow slit in the concrete wall. "They're rappelling down. 4 teams. Black suits. No insignia." Sampang swore under his breath. "Not Air Force. Not even U.S. military." "Private operators," Amelia said. "Vireo's own hit teams." They were fast, efficient, and coming directly for them. The bunker wouldn't hold. Amelia ripped the crate wires from the transmitter and grabbed the cube itself. Its core pulsed warm now, almost like it knew. It wasn't just data, it was reactive. She stuffed it into a sling she fashioned from an old flight harness, securing it tight against her chest. "We have to move," Sampang hesitated. "We're sitting at 18%. We haven't uploaded even a quarter of the file." "They'll blow the dish before we reach 50, she snapped. "We need to go wide, broadcast from somewhere else, somewhere high." Delos Reyes pointed. "Old comms tower, up the ridge northeast, if the stairs haven't collapsed." "It's our only shot," she said. "Grab the backup drive, copy everything. We might need to upload from scratch." They scrambled out into the light, just as 3 dark figures reached the edge of the hill. No words, no warnings. One raised a weapon. Amelia shoved Delos Reyes aside as a suppressed round smacked the bunker wall behind him. "Run!" she screamed. They bolted, zigzagging through the brush as bullets thudded into the ground. The cube thumped against her ribs with every step, not glass, not metal, something else. They reached the comms tower in under 3 minutes, lungs burning, legs aching. The tower was skeletal, rusted red, stretching high into the sky like a bony hand. Its cables swayed, shredded by years of storms. The ladder was barely holding together. "I'll go," Amelia said, chest heaving. "I'm lighter." She clipped the cube to her harness, slung the backpack over her shoulder, and started climbing. Each rung groaned under her weight. Sweat stung her eyes, her fingers slipping against the metal. Wind howled around her. 50 feet. 60. Below, Delos Reyes returned fire with his pistol, buying her seconds. But seconds weren't enough. As she neared the top, a sudden bang echoed, louder, sharper. She flinched. Sampang cried out, "Delos!" She glanced down. He was hit, bleeding from his shoulder, teeth clenched in pain but still firing. "Go!" he screamed at her. "Send it!" Amelia reached the top and crawled onto the rusted platform, clutching the cube. The old satellite repeater was there, tilted, battered, but intact. She plugged the backup drive into its access port. Lights flickered. The wind shoved against her. Every second felt like a countdown. Below, she could see the operators spreading out, flanking the ridge. Too many. They weren't meant to arrest. They were here to destroy. Amelia connected to the uplink and accessed an old protocol, one only military contractors still used. The signal was weak, but it started transmitting. 1%, 3%. She attached the cube's port directly to the node. The machine stuttered, then screamed to life. The data wasn't just raw files, it was AI encoded. It knew how to transmit itself, how to replicate. The cube pulsed with new intensity, white now, pure and brilliant. Images flared across her vision again, not from the future, from possible futures. She saw herself in a courtroom. She saw the city burning. She saw a grave, no name on it. Then, nothing. The signal spiked. 85%, 93%. The first of the operators climbed the tower. She turned, breath frozen in her lungs. He pointed a gun at her. "Step away." "No. I'll shoot." She looked at him. "I believe you." He fired. The bullet struck the metal next to her leg, ricocheting. The cube flared, reacting. The man blinked and then screamed, clutching his head, as light exploded from the device, knocking him backward. Amelia dropped to her knees, shielding her face. The transmitter beeped once. 100%. Sent. Every server connected to that satellite node now had the files. Thousands of them. Every military base. Every journalist. Every embassy. Every intelligence agency. The truth was out. The moment the signal finished broadcasting, the cube went dark. Amelia stared at it, breath caught in her throat. 1 second it had been glowing like a star, pulsing with the energy of 1,000 possible futures. The next, it was still, lifeless. Whatever had been inside, alive or not, had spent itself. And now it was just a relic. A cold wind scraped across the platform. The operator who had screamed and fallen from the tower was gone. Vanished below into the dense brush. She didn't know if he was dead or just unconscious, and she didn't have time to find out. She slung the now dark cube back over her shoulder and began her descent, hands trembling as she gripped the rusted rungs. When she reached the ground, Sampang was kneeling beside Delos Reyes, applying pressure to the wound. The older soldier was pale but alert, his blood soaking through a ripped piece of cloth. "I've had worse," Delos muttered. "Back when the rebels shot at me in Sulu." "You're bleeding from your damn armpit," Sampang growled. "Don't romanticize it." Amelia dropped beside them. "It's out. The file's gone global. We just pulled the pin." Delos chuckled, then winced. "Hope the world's ready." "They won't be," she said, "but now they'll have to be." A thundering crash echoed through the trees. Not a gunshot. Something bigger. Something mechanical. The trees parted, and a new figure stepped through the foliage. Black combat gear, no insignia, helmeted and holding what looked like a rifle, but sleeker, cleaner, newer. Amelia raised her hands. "We're done. The upload's finished. You can't stop it now." The figure didn't speak. It raised its weapon slowly. "Hey," Delos Reyes growled, lifting his pistol with a shaking hand. "You'll have to go through me." Amelia turned to the operator. "You don't have to do this. We know who authorized the cargo. We saw the symbol, Vireo. This goes all the way up, doesn't it? And now the world knows too." For the first time, the figure hesitated. Then a voice crackled inside Amelia's earpiece. It was Colonel Mathers again. "Amelia, get your team out of there, now!" Her pulse jumped. "You're tracking this in real time?" "We got the broadcast. The Pentagon's in chaos. Half the world just woke up to a tech program they never approved. And now you have about 5 minutes before someone launches a cleanup op." "What does that mean?" "It means Vireo's not going to just sit back and lose. They'll deny everything, and then they'll burn the ground to make it disappear, starting with that island." She glanced at the tree line. The black-clad operator was gone, just vanished. "Evac?" she asked. "Already inbound. Philippine Navy patrol boat coming from Palawan. You need to be at the South Beach in 20 minutes. She turned to the others. "We move. Now." They lifted Delos Reyes between them, dragging him across the sand and gravel, ducking through thickets, every shadow a potential ambush. The cube remained silent in her bag, but Amelia could feel something inside it had changed, not dead, just watching. As they moved, helicopters returned to the skies, this time not chasing them, but scattering. The perimeter was breaking down. The threat of exposure had thrown Vireo off balance. They reached the beach as the first hints of dusk fell across the ocean. Waves lapped at the sand, and in the distance, a dark gray patrol boat cut through the water like a blade. A figure in naval fatigues waved from the bow. "Over here!" They rushed toward the boat, dragging Delos into the shallows, water soaking their boots. Arms reached down, pulled them aboard, and within seconds the engines roared to life, pulling away from the island. Amelia collapsed against the side rail, her breath finally catching up to her lungs. It was done. The file was out. But even as she stared at the ocean horizon, her mind raced. What now? What would the world do with this knowledge? A predictive AI designed to rewrite war. A technology capable of projecting future outcomes, destroying cities, or preventing them from ever being built. All controlled by a corporation outside the laws of any one nation. The cube pulsed again, soft, like it was breathing. She reached into the bag and pulled it out. "What do you want?" she whispered. The screen lit up. A single line of text appeared. "There are others." She stared, heart pounding. "What do you mean?" New words formed. This was a test. Then the screen went dark again. Amelia sat back slowly, the wind from the ocean drying the salt on her skin. She looked at the others, then at the setting sun. They'd won one battle, but the war had just begun. The patrol boat cut through the waves as the sun slipped beneath the horizon. On the deck, Amelia sat with the cube resting in her lap, staring down at its silent face. For long stretches, it did nothing. No lights, no pulses. Then, suddenly, it would flash again. A flicker here, a line of code there. No patterns, just breadcrumbs. Delos Reyes lay wrapped in a thermal blanket, his wound bandaged, color returning to his cheeks. Sampang hovered nearby, pacing along the starboard rail like a man who knew their mission had succeeded, but also that it had placed a target on all of their backs. The crew said little. They were Navy, but they weren't in the loop. Their orders had come from Manila directly, hand-delivered and sealed. Pick up the survivors. Deliver them to a floating base halfway to Palawan. No questions asked. It was a 12-hour ride. Around hour 3, Amelia's sat phone rang. She answered instantly. Colonel Mathers again. This time his voice was colder. You understand what you've done, Captain Reyes? Is that what I still am? She asked. A captain? For now, he said. But that might change. She looked at the cube. Did the transmission reach everywhere? Everywhere that matters. NATO, ASEAN, United Nations, independent media in 5 continents. Your stunt burned the lid off 20 years of black ops. And what are they doing about it? Arguing, he said, finger pointing, threatening, pretending they had no idea this was happening under their noses. And Vireo? Still denying everything, Mathers said. Their CEO went on a video call with a congressional subcommittee 2 hours ago. He claimed the symbol on your footage was doctored. They're calling the entire transmission a psyop. So they're going to bury it. They're going to try, Mathers said. But this time there's too much data, too many backups. It's already on the dark net, mirrored on news servers, even circulating through encrypted telegram groups. What about the tech itself? He was quiet for a moment, then, you still have it? She looked down at the cube. It was glowing again, ever so faintly. I do. Then listen to me carefully, Mathers said. You need to destroy it. Her grip tightened. Why? Because it's not finished, he said. That device is a prototype. There are 3 more, and each one is connected, wirelessly, through a network we still don't fully understand. You've activated one node. The others are still dormant, but not for long. I've seen the phrase, she said quietly. There are others. The cube told me. That wasn't a message, Mathers said. That was a threat. Amelia stood and walked to the edge of the deck, sea spray hitting her face. So we drop it in the ocean and pretend it never existed? If we're lucky, yes. She stared at the dark waves, then back at the cube. It was no longer glowing faintly. It was shining, fully, white-hot from within. The sat phone buzzed sharply in her hand, Mathers' voice warping. Amelia, are you seeing anything? The signal just spiked. The cube vibrated, once, then again. It was coming alive. She placed it on the deck slowly. A beam of light shot upward from its core, straight into the sky. No sound. Just pure, solid white, vanishing into the stars. Oh God, Mathers breathed. It's pinging the others. The sky above them shimmered. Not a trick of the light. Not imagination. A second beam rose in the east, faint, distant, over the horizon. Then a third, far to the south. 3 points, 3 other cubes, all online. Amelia watched in stunned silence as the cube's display flickered back on. A symbol pulsed into view, not Vireo's this time. Something older, something alien. No words. Just a ring of shifting characters rotating like a celestial clock. And below it, one line of text. The awakening has begun. Mathers screamed something through the sat phone, but the noise was drowned out by the wind, the hum of the cube, the blood rushing in Amelia's ears. She took a step back. Then the cube spoke, not aloud, not digitally, but directly into her mind. You were chosen, not to expose, but to decide. She dropped to her knees, clutching her head. Flashes of what could be burned into her thoughts, a world united or shattered. War redefined, made obsolete, or perfected. A future forged by humans or handed to something else. And in every version of that future, Amelia, at the center. She gasped, breath trembling, as the visions ended. The cube sat quiet again, dead, waiting. Delos Reyes had pulled himself upright, watching her with wide eyes. What did it say to you? She turned to him. Nothing I ever wanted to hear. The floating base loomed in the distance just as dawn cracked open the sky. A colossal gray platform, half warship and half oil rig, it rested like a leviathan in the sea. Rows of antennae, towers, and radar dishes lined its silhouette, and black uniformed figures moved briskly along its deck. No flags, no insignia, Just one word stenciled onto the side of a shipping container: interim. As the patrol boat approached, Amelia noticed something eerie. No one hailed them. No guard shouted instructions. The figures simply stood there, waiting, unmoving. The silence was worse than a warning. A steel ramp extended from the side of the base as they docked. A man in a dark suit walked down to meet them. He wasn't military. His haircut was too perfect. His posture too smooth. Handler, Amelia thought. Someone used to reading rooms, not combat zones. Captain Reyes, he greeted, offering his hand, as though none of this was extraordinary. I'm Director Holloway, Global Intelligence Subcommittee. She didn't take his hand. Why am I here? You sent the single most volatile information package in modern history to nearly every secure line on the planet, Holloway said with a small smile. You're here because this is the only place left to talk about it without anyone listening. Sampang stayed beside Delos Reyes, who limped slowly behind, now leaning heavily on a borrowed crutch. We need medical attention, Sampang snapped. He's bleeding through his gauze. Holloway gestured to a medic nearby. He'll be taken care of, and so will you, but the captain comes with me. Amelia didn't move. I'm not letting this cube out of my sight. You won't have to, Holloway said, but you need to understand. This isn't just about the file anymore. It's about the choice you made when you touched it, the choice you made when you didn't destroy it. She frowned. You mean transmitting the data? He lowered his voice. No, I mean waking it up. She followed him through the base, past rows of locked doors and humming servers, until they reached a secure chamber. It was glass-walled, lined with data interfaces and communication nodes she couldn't begin to decipher. In the center of the room was a table, and on that table sat a second cube, identical to hers, active, alive. I thought mine was the first, she said, staring at it. It was the first to be moved, Holloway said, but not the first to activate. He brought up a holographic display. Footage played, grainy, infrared. In it, a team of operatives opened a container in a warehouse in northern Kazakhstan. The moment they touched the cube inside, the footage cut to static. The team never reported back, Holloway said. We only found the cameras, and then 2 days later, another signal pulsed off the coast of Argentina. That one vanished before we could trace it. Yours is the third. Amelia looked down at her own cube, now resting in her hands again. It pulsed softly, as if aware of its siblings. What are they? She asked. We don't know, Holloway said. Vareo claims they were recovered tech, artifacts, not of human origin. Her heart skipped. Extraterrestrial? He nodded. Possibly, or extra-dimensional, or synthetic intelligence older than civilization. They never told us where the first one came from, but they've been studying it since 1991. She sat down slowly, the air in her lungs suddenly thinner. And what do they want? Control, Holloway said. Not the cubes, the people who built them, the ones who first sent them here, if that's even what happened. These aren't weapons, Amelia. They're beacons, anchors, devices designed to interface with sentient life, not to destroy it, to test it. She looked up at him. You're saying this was all a test? Your reaction, the military's reaction, humanity's reaction, he said. And now that it's out, the others are waiting, watching, measuring. For what? He leaned in. To see if we're worth the next step. She didn't respond, not right away, because in her mind the cube was speaking again, not in words this time, in impressions, in possibilities, visions of a future where these cubes replaced every weapon, where war was resolved through foresight, through shared visions of what destruction would bring, where no side could lie, because every side would see the cost before pulling the trigger. But in another vision, one darker, she saw the cubes weaponized, used to erase not just cities, but cultures, history rewritten before it happened, lives snuffed out before they were even born. She gripped the edge of the table. There's going to be a war over these, isn't there? Holloway nodded. It's already begun. And you're the face of it. Her eyes snapped to his. I didn't ask for that. None of us do, he said. But the moment you refused to land, you passed the first test. The moment you uploaded the truth, you passed the second. The question is, what will you do with the third? She stared at the two glowing cubes, and she knew with a quiet certainty that the choice wouldn't just be hers anymore. It would belong to the whole world. But she'd have to lead it there. The conference room aboard the floating base was unlike any war room Amelia had ever seen. It wasn't cluttered with maps or guarded by grim-faced soldiers. It was quiet, almost reverent. A round table stood at the center, surrounded by a dozen seats. Holloway led her to the one marked with her name, already printed on a placard that hadn't existed an hour ago. To her left, a Chinese general sat in silence, eyes sharp and unreadable. To her right, a French intelligence liaison, fingers steepled beneath his chin. Across the table, a Nigerian cybersecurity minister, a Jordanian diplomat, and a Russian major general who hadn't said a word since she walked in. They were all here for one reason: the cubes. No one used that name aloud, not anymore. They were simply the interfaces. Amelia looked down at the one in front of her, hers. The one that had followed her through the sky, past bullets and betrayal, and into a future no one was ready for. It was silent now, but it was waiting. The data's gone global, Holloway said, addressing the room. And with it, we've confirmed the existence of all 4 known interfaces. One was lost in transit. One is presumed offline. 2 remain in active custody. And this woman, he gestured to Amelia, was the first to make contact with one without incident. Incident? The Russian barked. You call triggering an international firestorm not an incident? The firestorm, Holloway said calmly, was not hers. It was ours. We lit it the moment we allowed a private contractor to hide alien technology inside a civilian cargo run. She exposed it. And now every extremist, every rogue state, every mercenary hacker in the world is looking for one of these things, the French liaison snapped. We can't contain it. The data's out. No, Amelia said finally, standing. We can't contain it. But we can choose what we become because of it. All eyes turned to her. The cube gave me a choice, she said. Not in words, in what it showed me. Futures. All possible, all terrible in different ways, and all dependent on how we respond. She looked around the table. These interfaces are tests. They weren't given to us to win wars. They were given to see if we deserve the right to prevent them. The Chinese general leaned forward. Prevent war by forecasting the cost? No, she said, by making us live with it before it even happens. A beat of silence. Then Holloway said, The cube confirmed that it's communicating with the other interfaces. A full link hasn't been established yet, but if we allow them to connect, they'll create a shared intelligence, the diplomat from Jordan finished, one beyond us. Which is exactly why we must destroy them, the Russian snapped. All of them. Immediately. That would be an act of war, the Nigerian said calmly, against something we do not understand. Holloway looked to Amelia. The data you sent. It changed things, but it's not enough. People will question it, doubt it. They'll twist it into conspiracies. We need more. You need a witness, she said. Someone who's touched it. Seen what's coming. You, Holloway said. She looked down at the cube again. For a moment it flickered. Then her reflection stared back. Tired, bruised, but unbroken. She reached forward and placed her hand on the interface. The room fell away. Time cracked. The table vanished. She was standing in a desert, red and endless. A storm gathered in the distance. In front of her, 3 other cubes hovered, pulsing in rhythm. She saw a city in flames behind one, a sea wall breaking behind another. The third showed a child, her child, looking up at a black sky streaked with fire. The cubes turned in unison. A voice, not a sound but a presence, spoke into her. You are at the threshold. Of what? She asked. The inheritance. She didn't understand. But the storm behind them parted, and for one impossible second she saw the silhouette of something massive, alive, watching, waiting. She gasped, and the room snapped back into place. She was in her chair again, her palm still resting on the interface. Everyone stared at her. What did it show you? Holloway asked quietly. She looked at him, then at each of them in turn. It showed me what's coming if we don't learn to choose better. And, the Chinese general asked, do you think we can? She didn't answer with words. She turned the cube toward the center of the table. It lit up, bright and brilliant. A second later, the interface at the other end responded. The Russian major flinched. The two cubes were syncing, sharing, speaking. Amelia turned to Holloway. We let them talk, not just to each other, to us, to the world. You want to give this intelligence a voice? No, she said. I want to give humanity a mirror. Holloway nodded slowly. And then, for the first time since she boarded that cargo plane days ago, Amelia Reyes allowed herself to breathe. The interface pulsed. A final message blinked across its screen. Phase 1 complete. Preparing for initiation. She stared at it and whispered, What's Phase 2? The cube responded in 2 words, global judgment. And then it went still. Amelia didn't sleep that night. She stayed in a reinforced cabin aboard the floating base, one with no windows and a camera pointed at the corner ceiling. She'd stripped off the uniform she didn't technically have the right to wear anymore, rinsed the ocean from her skin, and laid the cube in the metal tray beside the cot. It pulsed once an hour, like it was breathing. She wasn't afraid of it, not anymore. She was afraid of what it would do if it ever felt she was lying. That morning, Holloway returned with a sealed tablet and a proposition. You've been invited to Geneva, he said. She stared at him. A peace summit? A global emergency hearing, high clearance only, emergency authorization. After the upload you triggered, several G20 members want to speak with you face to face. She narrowed her eyes. They want to control the narrative. They want to avoid collapse, he said. Countries are posturing. Military satellites are tracking interface signals. Everyone wants to know who owns the technology. No one does, she said. That's the whole point. And no one believes it. He slid the tablet to her. They want you to deliver a statement. You're the only person alive who's interacted with one directly and not been altered. Altered? 3 other contacts have occurred in the last 24 hours. The subjects aren't speaking. Not in any human language. The scientists monitoring them are calling it integration breakdown. It's like the interfaces gave them too much too fast. And I'm different? We don't know why, but whatever happened between you and that cube, there was balance. She sat in silence for a long moment, watching the glow reflect off the brushed metal of the wall. Get me to Geneva, she said, but I'm bringing the interface. He didn't argue. The jet they flew her in was unmarked. Civilian shell, military gut. 2 pilots, no crew. The interface was cradled in a lead-lined containment case across from her. Still active, still blinking, still listening. Halfway through the flight, turbulence rocked the cabin. The interface surged in response. 3 flashes, then stillness. She gripped the armrest. What was that? The co-pilot's voice came over the comm. We lost signal with one of the South Atlantic satellites. Something blacked it out. The interface pulsed. Amelia turned to it. You did that? The screen blinked. Not I. Another interface. Somewhere, doing something that pushed beyond protocol, beyond warning. She exhaled slowly. They're not unified, she whispered. They're testing us differently. You are the constant. What does that mean? No response. Just silence. She leaned back in the seat, heart pounding in her throat. This wasn't a mission anymore. This was becoming a judgment. The jet landed just after sunrise at Geneva International, Snow dusted the tarmac, and breath misted in the air as Amelia stepped out into a line of black SUVs, engines idling. Two security officers took the interface crate without touching it directly, lifting it like a radioactive relic. A UN escort led her to the last car in the line, where a diplomat with silver hair waited behind tinted glass. "Captain Reyes," he greeted as she entered. "I'm Minister Émile Larocque. You'll be under my nation's protection while on Swiss ground. If anything goes sideways, we extract you immediately. Understood?" "I'm not here for protection," she said. "I'm here to finish what this started." Larocque gave a half smile. "And to stop the world from tearing itself apart." She said nothing. They arrived at the Palais des Nations, its old stone face ringed by newer security, biometric gates, automated drones, riot-proof barricades. The world had not reacted well to the interface reveal. Inside, the chamber was stark. 100 delegates, only 20 were allowed to speak. Behind them, digital panels streamed translated audio. Soldiers lined the walls, visibly armed, visibly tense. Amelia was escorted to the central podium. The interface crate was placed beside her. The chamber dimmed. The moderator, a Korean woman named Ji-Suk Park, addressed the room. "Captain Amelia Reyes, the civilian pilot who first made contact with the device now known to multiple governments as the Interface." She nodded. "You may proceed." Amelia stepped to the microphone. The room went silent. "I didn't sign up for any of this," she began. "I was just flying cargo. When the order came to land, I resisted, not because I thought I was special or brave, but because I knew something wasn't right. They wanted to stop a routine flight without telling me why. They sent jets. They tried to force me down. They said it was a mistake. It wasn't." She placed her hand on the interface. It pulsed once, and then, slowly, its surface opened. Gasps rippled through the delegates. Light spilled upward from the core, projecting into the air. A sphere of data, images, sound, numbers and symbols not native to any human alphabet. Slowly, the room filled with the hum of something alien. The interface was speaking. Amelia kept her hand steady. "This device doesn't destroy," she said. "It shows, it reveals, it mirrors. What you're seeing now is a response, not a threat, a simulation. What happens next is entirely up to us." Images flooded the chamber, cities burning, oceans rising, then rebuilding. New cities, clean skies, diplomats shaking hands, global firewalls being dismantled, satellites aligning in peaceful constellations. A future, not certain, but possible. Then everything turned red. A flash of war. One interface exploded. Another blinked out. A world blacked out, one signal at a time. The interface shut off. Darkness returned. Silence. Then the interface showed one line of text. "Probability calculations complete. Humanity at threshold." Ji-Suk Park stood slowly. "What does that mean?" Amelia looked at her. "It means the next move is ours. The interfaces are watching, judging, not with missiles, with math, with timelines, with probability trees 1,000,000,000 branches deep. If we react with fear, they'll vanish. If we react with violence, they'll respond in kind." "And if we do nothing?" asked the Russian general. "Then we stay in the dark," she said, "and someone else finds them later and uses them." The delegates began shouting, some demanding control, others warning of AI sovereignty violations, a few begging for cooperation. Amelia didn't wait for the debate to spiral. She turned back to the interface. "You said I was the constant," she whispered. "Yes." "Then what happens if I step away?" The interface pulsed. "Another will be chosen." She swallowed. "And if I stay?" A new message formed. "Then we begin." The entire room went quiet as the interface activated once more. This time, the projections weren't warnings. They were blueprints, designs, networks, solutions, to famine, to war, to governance itself. Amelia looked up. "The choice isn't about whether we control them," she said. "It's about whether we're ready to be seen by them, to be understood." She turned back to the diplomats. "Because they already understand us, better than we understand ourselves." The interface's final message for the day blinked across the panel. One planet, one chance. Choose. The Geneva summit didn't end that day. It didn't even end the next. What Amelia Reyes had unleashed refused to be buried by procedure or paralyzed by protocol. Within hours, clips of the interface's projection had leaked. Not the raw feed, just flashes, the firestorms, the rebuilding, the phrase, "humanity at threshold." And the final message, "One planet, one chance. Choose." News channels spun it as a warning. Religious leaders called it prophecy. Scientists argued over whether the device was an AI, an alien beacon, or some ultra-advanced psychological experiment crafted by man and masquerading as divinity. But Amelia knew better. Because the interface never spoke like a machine. It spoke like something that had watched for a very long time. 2 days later, she stood on the rooftop of a UN safe house overlooking the lake. Snow dusted her coat. The interface sat on the concrete wall beside her, pulsing softly under the cloudlight. Sampang joined her, 2 steaming mugs in hand. Hot chocolate, the good stuff, Swiss-made. She took one and offered a small smile. "How's Delos?" "He's up, arguing with the nurse and claiming his shoulder wound qualifies him for retirement." "Maybe it does." He sat beside her. "The interface still talking to you?" "It doesn't need to. I know what it's waiting for." "Which is?" She looked out at the lake where ships of every size had come to dock. Journalists, scientists, security forces. The eyes of the world were pointed straight at this city. "It's waiting to see if we share the tech," she said, "if we cooperate. If we stop trying to hoard it and start using it." "You really think the nations will give it up?" "They might not have a choice." The interface pulsed. Then, without a word from her, it lit up once more. A ring of light rotated across its surface. She hadn't touched it. She hadn't spoken. Still, it responded. A projection beamed upward, visible even in daylight. A map, not of Earth, of orbits. Hundreds of small beacons, evenly spaced, blinking across the upper stratosphere. Some were marked red, some blue, a few gold. "Satellites?" Sampang asked. "No," she whispered. "Interfaces." The cube responded with text. "Phase 2 unlocked. Communication grid initiated." "Holy!" Sampang breathed. Amelia stared at the grid. "It's not about Earth anymore," she said. "It never was." The interface turned again. New words appeared. "You have been selected." "Selected for what?" she asked. But this time there was no answer, only coordinates. In Alaska, in Namibia, in the waters south of Fiji, in the mountains of Chile. She read them silently. 4 corners of the planet, each remote, each perfectly balanced against the rotation of the Earth. And underneath, one final prompt. "Begin Ambassador Initiative?" Sampang's jaw clenched. "They're asking you to lead." "No," she said. "They're asking me to choose who leads next." He looked over at her. "Are you going?" She nodded. "I think I have to." "And if the world says no?" She turned to him, fire blooming in her chest. "Then I go anyway." He smiled and sipped his cocoa. "Guess I better pack a bag." 4 months later. The broadcast went out from a relay station in Iceland. No governments approved it. No logos were shown. Just a single satellite image of Earth. Amelia stood at a lectern in a silver-lined outpost carved into the side of a Chilean peak. She wasn't wearing a uniform. She wasn't speaking for any flag, just herself. "The interfaces have offered knowledge," she said. "But they will not enforce peace. They will not solve our problems for us. They are watching, waiting, testing." She paused, then added, They are not gods, they are not machines, they are lenses through which we can see what we've become and what we still might be. A moment of silence passed. Then she ended with 6 words. Don't wait for a second chance. Behind her, a dome opened to the sky. One of the interfaces, now active, rose into the air, hovered for a moment, then blinked out of visible space with no sound. Across the world, the others began to rise, one by one. The judgment had begun, and it would not come with fire. It would come with choice. 3 weeks later, somewhere in Alaska, the wind cut through the tundra like a blade. Amelia stood outside the geodesic dome alone, the interface slung in its titanium harness across her back. The outpost here had no name, just coordinates. On the surface, it was a weather station. In truth, it was one of 4 gate sites revealed by the interface after Geneva. This one had just opened. Inside the dome was no alien beacon, no floating monolith, just a hatch. Old steel, cold as space, covered in frost and soil. But beneath it, the interface pulsed with anticipation. It had brought her here not to open something, but to activate it. She pressed her hand against the hatch. It didn't hiss or shake. It simply clicked. And then it began to open. Beneath was a staircase, carved into bedrock, spiraling into blackness. She turned on her light and descended. Each step felt older than the last, as if they weren't built, but uncovered. When she reached the bottom, her breath caught. It wasn't a room, it was a chamber, a sphere, the same diameter as the one she saw in her visions, covered in symbols, glyphs, grooves that looked like written language and quantum circuitry fused together. At its center stood a platform. Empty. She placed the interface onto it. It lit up instantly. Beams of data streamed from it into the walls, the floor, the air itself. Then something began to rise. Not a machine, not a projection, a seed, shaped like a teardrop, spinning slowly, suspended in the air. She stepped forward. The interface glowed white. This is the key. Key to what? She whispered. To the inflection point. What does that mean? The moment a species decides if it will survive. She stared at the seed. It was beautiful, transparent, but containing something vast, like a galaxy trapped in amber. She reached out, and the interface surged. A flood of visions overtook her mind. Humanity's next 100 years, some timelines fractured into civil war and extinction, others rose into harmony, into the stars, and at the center of each was the same seed, either used or feared, protected or destroyed. Amelia staggered back, heart racing. "This is it," she said aloud. "This is what it was all building toward." The interface didn't reply. It didn't have to. She knew what she had to do. Geneva, 1 month later. The summit reconvened, this time with all 20 G20 nations in physical attendance. It was no longer about secrecy. The world had seen the projections, had seen the domes, had seen Amelia. Her broadcast was being taught in schools now. People called her the Threshold Pilot. She stood once again at the center of the chamber. The interface, now cooled and dormant, sat beside her. But in her hands, she held something else. The seed. "This is not a weapon," she said. "This is not a technology to be traded like oil or stored like uranium." She paused, letting the weight of silence settle. "This is a vote." The crowd didn't move. She raised the seed above her head. It shimmered under the lights, casting slow-moving galaxies across the chamber walls. "This will not tell us what to do. It will only show us who we are." She said it on the podium. And now we all have to answer. 30 days later, a new global coalition was born. Not a government, not a military. A council, selected by a strange mix of AI, consensus, randomness, and representation. A council to be watched by the interfaces. They didn't interfere. Not yet. But their presence changed everything. Weapons development stalled. Misinformation campaigns collapsed under truth simulations that predicted their real-world outcomes with brutal clarity. Economies stopped chasing quarterly dominance and started focusing on long-term survivability. Flood zones were evacuated. Starvation was modeled out of existence if the world stayed on the path. There were still wars, still hatred, but now humanity had mirrors held up to every decision. And every person, every nation had to ask the same question: what future are we building? And what future are we refusing to see? 1 year later, Amelia's journal. We're not alone. Maybe we never were. Maybe the interfaces were placed here as a final exam, or maybe they're us, from the future. I don't know. I'm done pretending I do. What I do know is that every time a leader steps up, they pause now, before they launch, before they lie, before they profit. They think about the consequences. They think about how their choices will be modeled, mapped, exposed. The interfaces taught us the scariest truth of all. We always had the ability to change. We just never believed we had to. She closed her journal, looked up at the stars, and waited for the next signal. 1 year and 6 days later, unknown location. The facility didn't appear on any satellite imagery. It was buried into the spine of the Andes, above the tree line, beneath a glacier, and guarded by a dozen false weather stations. The only way in was by encoded biometric drone. Amelia arrived alone, wearing civilian clothes, her hair pulled back, her eyes clear. She no longer worked for any country. She no longer needed to. The world had changed, and not because it wanted to, because the interfaces forced it to look in the mirror. She stepped through the final doorway and into a white chamber. 4 seats waited, all occupied. On the left, an ethicist from Ghana who'd helped reroute global agricultural policy using interface simulations. Next to him, a physicist from Malaysia who'd deciphered the interface's atmospheric correction models and applied them to deforestation in Indonesia. Across from them, a teenage coder from Warsaw, anonymous online until his predictive stabilization framework prevented a microstate's economy from imploding. And in the final seat, no one. Amelia sat. The interface, now fully integrated into the room itself, glowed in soft pulses along the walls. A voice, not a synthetic one, not alien either, but hers, speaking to herself, filled the air. Threshold completed, initiating next sequence. No one spoke. They didn't need to. The chamber dimmed. Above them, a holographic star map spread like a spiderweb of infinite futures. Thousands of dots appeared, connected by lines. Each dot pulsed in a rhythm, some fast, some slow, some steady, some erratic. What you see are contact points, attempts, other worlds, other tests. One line, just one, turned gold. Humanity is the first to pass. The room seemed to inhale. Amelia's breath caught. We were never alone, she whispered. No, but you were always blind. And now? Now you may see. The star map folded inward, compressing like a lung exhaling. At the center, one point remained. Earth. Its pulse was slower now, calmer. Around it, 4 new structures appeared in orbit, not satellites, not weapons, gifts. Each one glowed like the interface. 4 archives: knowledge, design, diplomacy, movement. Movement? The teen coder asked. The technology to leave. Amelia's eyes widened. You're giving us interstellar travel? No, we're giving you the choice. Because that was always what it came down to. Not a command, a choice. Humanity had survived the mirror test. It had walked through fire. It had stood at the brink, teeth bared, and chosen to step back. Not everyone agreed with the interfaces, but no one could ignore them. And now, the real future could begin. 5 years later, the first departure. The launch wasn't televised. It wasn't branded. It wasn't owned. It was watched silently by billions. A single ship, powered by technology never seen before, crafted using interface data, controlled by no nation, bound for the closest signal point, what the interfaces now called a successful dormancy. A world that had failed its test and gone silent. A team of 30 were aboard, scientists, linguists, builders, observers, and Amelia Reyes, the threshold pilot. As the ship climbed into the stars, she sat by the observation deck, watching Earth shrink below. She didn't cry. She didn't wave. She whispered 3 words only the interface could hear. We were ready. Aboard the Odysseus, 3 months into deep space. They named the ship Odysseus not for irony, but for intent. Like its namesake, it was built for a return, not just a journey, though none aboard truly knew if they'd ever see Earth again. In her small quarters near the bow, Amelia Reyes sat against the porthole, watching the stars pass like silent needles through black silk. There was no sensation of speed, no rumble of thrusters. The interface's propulsion core didn't work like anything humans had ever designed. It bent space quietly, elegantly. The crew called the interface chamber the sanctuary. Each of the 4 interfaces, one from each gate site, had been installed in containment arrays deep in the ship's midsection. They did not speak often. They did not emit light like before, but they pulsed, always in sync. Each pulse, Amelia was told, contained entire volumes of information compressed beyond quantum memory. Not just data, choices, histories, ghosts. And then one day, without warning, they changed. She was walking the corridor when the lights dimmed. The hum shifted. A vibration, barely perceptible, like a low breath, settled into the ship's bones. She turned toward the sanctuary before anyone else noticed. By the time she arrived, all 4 interfaces were glowing. And then they spoke. Not aloud. Inside her. You are nearing the site. Amelia swallowed hard. Which one? The world that failed. She stared at the core display, a sensor map. At the far edge, a blue point had appeared. A planet, roughly Earth's size, temperate zone, thin but breathable atmosphere. But no EM signals, no satellites, no heat signatures beyond geothermal activity. Silent. Did they all die? They chose stasis. She blinked. You mean they put themselves to sleep? To escape consequence? They could not face judgment. Her hands trembled. They gave up? They waited. For another, for a mirror. The ship's automated systems kicked in, adjusting course, preparing descent vectors. She called the others, the ship's linguist, the mission commander, 2 interface technicians. They gathered around the hollow screen in silence as the world came into view. Oceans, mountain ranges, artificial lines, cities swallowed by plant life. And at the center of the largest continent, a spire. Not metallic, not natural. White, smooth, towering into the sky like a monument built for gods. The interface pulsed again. Land. The surface. Day 1. They touched down on a high plateau 2 kilometers from the spire. Gravity, 0.92 g. Atmosphere, dry but safe with filtration. Life, faint, microbial. No movement above insect scale. Civilization had long since gone dormant. They trekked to the spire, no weapons drawn, no shields active. Only scanners and recorders and Amelia, the only one carrying an interface directly. When they reached the base of the tower, they found no door, no entrance. But the moment Amelia stepped forward, the ground opened. A staircase, spiraling down, just like before. She led. They descended for hours. No resistance, no traps, just silence. At the base, a hall of mirrors, literal, but wrong. Each reflected not their physical form, but decisions. One mirror showed Amelia as a soldier, leading a strike against the original interface after refusing the Geneva summons. Another showed her in prison, accused of treason, the interface locked in a lab. A third, older, colder, showed a grave, her grave. She touched none. At the end of the hall, a chamber. Inside it, another interface, dormant, alone. Its glow flickered weakly as she approached. The others stayed back. Amelia walked forward, heart pounding, and placed her palm on its surface. The entire chamber lit. Then, for the first time, she heard another voice. Not the interface. Another human. Faint. Recorded. Old. A woman. If you're hearing this, we didn't make it. We failed. We couldn't let go of control. We fought over the interface. We weaponized the projections, turned them against our own cities. We thought judgment was war. It wasn't. It was reflection, and we couldn't bear the truth. The voice cracked. If you are from another world, remember this. You are never judged by the stars, only by the mirror you hold up to yourselves. The message ended. The interface pulsed once more. The test is never singular. She closed her eyes. Can we help them? You already have. She opened her eyes. What happens now? The interface responded with just one word. Repair. 6 months later. Earth. The second broadcast was different from the first. It was not a warning. It was an invitation. Images streamed through interface hubs across the globe, teams from Odysseus working alongside the dormant world systems, reactivating power grids, decoding genetic archives, restoring history, teaching, and learning. Because the failed world had left behind something extraordinary, a mirror of Earth, not just geographically, intellectually, emotionally. Their interface designs were different. Their fears were the same, but their map ended in silence. Until now, 10 years later, Earth's orbit. The ArcNet spanned 500 satellites across 2 hemispheres. Each carried partial interface protocols, not AI, not weapons. Observation, simulation, judgment through probability. War had not vanished, but it had become nearly impossible to start without public reckoning. When one nation moved toward aggression, the ArcNet showed every citizen what would follow. In detail, in blood. It didn't stop every conflict, but it stopped the worst. Famine dropped 80%, refugee relocation efficiency tripled. Carbon reversal reached a planetary net positive. There were still governments, still power struggles, but the world had been given perspective, and it had changed everything. Amelia's final log. Location classified. I don't pretend to understand the interfaces fully. I don't think we're meant to. They're not gods. They're not punishers. They're more like consequence made visible. And maybe that's all humanity ever needed. Not a savior, just a mirror. I was asked once what it felt like the moment they told me I passed the test. When the interface chose me, I think it was the moment I refused to land. Not because I was brave, but because I asked why. Maybe that's all the interface ever wanted us to ask. Why? 6 months after her final log, aboard the Horizon Relay. The Horizon Relay wasn't a ship, and it wasn't a station. It was both, a permanent structure in high lunar orbit, operated not by any government, but by the Interface Coalition, a rotating council of scientists, diplomats, artists, and ordinary citizens from around the world. Its purpose was simple. Listen, not just to the interfaces on Earth, but to the ones now active across the stars. Over the past 3 years, 36 interface pulses had been detected, all from distant systems, some consistent, some random, all deliberate. The pulses weren't in any known language, but they shared a structure, rhythm, like music. Some scientists argued they were status updates. Others believed they were invitations. And one man, Dr. Haruto Oki, the linguist who had accompanied Amelia to the dormant world, believed they were something else entirely. "Confessions," he said. Each interface is recording what its world has done, good or bad, and broadcasting it out, like a memory, like a warning, or maybe like a prayer. No one could prove him wrong, and so each week the Horizon Relay broadcast Earth's own story in return. Not propaganda, not polished speeches, just truth. Fragments of Amelia's original flight logs, footage of the Geneva summit, excerpts from her mission journals, testimonials from farmers whose crops had doubled after adopting interface soil simulations, peacekeepers who intervened before war because the ArcNet showed them what the aftermath would look like. Sometimes they even transmitted silence. Because silence, as Amelia had once said, was proof humanity had chosen to listen. And somewhere in the great dark, they hoped someone was listening back.